Well, BBC Chairman Richard Sharp has said there was no conflict of interest in him helping the former Prime Minister secure a reported £800,000 loan before he was appointed to the BBC, insisting that he's confident he was given the job on merit, adding that he will not be stepping down. Let's get more with our political correspondent Tom Harwood joining us in Westminster. And Tom, of course, it's yet another piece of baggage that's dogging this government at the moment, even though, as Rishi Sunak's indicated, this was a previous incumbent.
Yes, certainly still a headache for the Prime Minister, a tale of two chairmen, of course. One, perhaps, the earlier story of Nadhim Zahawi being perhaps more pertinent to this Prime Minister, closer to this Prime Minister, an appointment that this Prime Minister made. The story with the BBC chairman, or the chairman of the BBC board, I should say, is slightly more removed from this current Prime Minister, and yet Number 10 are still sticking to this line that they are standing by Richard Sharp, saying that Richard Sharp went through a rigorous two-stage selection process with all the scrutiny that was applied at that stage in 2020 and has acted with propriety ever since. So yes, Number 10 lashing themselves to the mast on this one, standing by the appointment procedure that went before. And I suppose the reason why Number 10 might well be doing this, might well be unwilling to buckle at the pressure over this story is, and in the words of Boris Johnson, many people on the Conservative side of things see it as overblown, as nonsense, as Boris Johnson himself said. This was about a meeting facilitating a loan, and the question is, how does this look, rather than was anything improper actually done?
And Boris Johnson himself on manoeuvres, as some have described it, of course, for that visit to Ukraine. It's interesting, as we're reflecting, that David Lammy, the shadow foreign secretary who's been speaking to Chatham House this morning, he was actually quite supportive of Boris Johnson's trip to see President Zelensky.
Yes, it is interesting because asking Number 10 this week about when they knew the former Prime Minister was going across to Kiev, they were very tight-lipped. It's interesting to see if there's any tension perhaps between backbench MP Boris Johnson and Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, as there certainly has been in the past. Potentially this may well be seen as something that might be a little undermining of the Prime Minister's current position. Clearly Boris Johnson has a closer relationship with President Zelensky than Rishi Sunak does, and clearly Boris Johnson sees that he has a role here, aside from domestic political squabbles, to be that sort of envoy figure, to be that champion for the people of Ukraine and their struggle. Certainly he carries a lot of international cachet. He was also at Davos last week, where he was making much the same case that there needs to be a sort of stronger international coalition, sending the support that Ukraine needs. What Number 10 says to that, of course, is that Number 10 has sent a division of tanks, of Challenger 2 tanks, and there may well be more on the way. Boris Johnson asking for fixed-wing aircraft as well. Let's see whether or not Number 10 follows through on that. But it is fair to say that the United Kingdom has been at the front of the pack when it comes to providing that support for Ukraine as things have gone.
Yeah, and we had this sort of front-page exclusive with Boris Johnson on the Daily Mail, first-hand reporting, which is quite interesting. But clearly he's gone a bit further on the issue of Ukraine, saying about future NATO membership. And it is interesting, of course, that we've had a bit of movement with Poland now, saying they will send these Leopard tanks. The suggestion that Germany still, a little uneasy about direct involvement, even though the tanks themselves are German-made.
Yes, it's been a most remarkable story of German hesitancy here. Now, the German-made Leopard 2 tanks are used by many European countries, most notably and most vocally in recent weeks, Poland, which has wanted to provide them to Ukraine. However, there is a sort of secondary export regulation on this that means even though the tanks are owned by Poland, Germany has had this final say on whether or not they are then secondarily exported out of Poland. And Germany has been really shuffling its feet in the most extraordinarily slow way in terms of making a decision. We've now got to the point today where Germany says, in principle, they may well allow this, but then we get through to another set of foot dragging, if you will, which is the actual changing of those regulations, which it seems like it needs legislation within Germany, which could well take more and more time. There is certainly no urgency around this issue in Germany, and all that is happening is a great deal of international shaming. We saw the heads of Baltic countries just at the end of last week submit this sort of letter to Germany, almost saying, what the hell are you doing? Make sure that you get on board with the rest of the team. Germany still, however, curiously, dragging its feet.